Bankers want the bill so that their investigators who are looking into credit card fraud and check forgery can make arrests. The investigators would be trained by the Department of Public Safety at the bank's expense. But some senators objected, saying that the Senate is approaching the creation of a police state by granting investigative powers to so many factions. Senator Michael Figures from Mobile says if the legislature grants police powers to banks, how can it turn down requests that could come from grocery stores, drug stores, or even high schools? The bill passed by a vote of 16 to 11. It now goes to the House. A bill that had fewer problems passing the Senate gives Bear Bryant the chance to continue coaching at the University of Alabama after he reaches the 70-year mandatory retirement age. Coach Bryant will be 68 in September. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Is the constitutional amendment.
They just renting the rentals and pay for the lights and air conditioning and all this. They rent the cars from the Knights of Columbus.
Oh, Section 21 does say.
That anyone who was burned gets free restricted children's house, similarly supported by the Shrine.
And it happened to young people. You know, how long has you ever lived?
What I'd like to make, we do not have maybe in Montgomery County. Montgomery County, the Tulsa County, has several charitable organizations.
These two have been big factors in our team.
Tiger coach Steve Beelan took a big gamble this spring, shuffling his lineup. Beelan moved Dan Cassidy and Nick Stetson up the singles ladder, and he split the #1 doubles combination of Derek Tarr and Bud Cox. The moves paid off. The Tigers have achieved more balance, which has carried them through matches with 4th-ranked Houston and 8th-ranked Trinity.
We felt we'd be in the match with Trinity, expected a close match, and we're fortunate to win in the 3rd set of the 9th match in doubles to take a 5-4 victory. At Houston, we felt perhaps we were a little bit outmatched, and we're very happily surprised to win the top 5 singles matches to clinch the match.
The pollsters have Auburn 21st, but Beelan predicts a top 10 to 15 finish when the next rankings come out. The Tigers are led by all-SEC seniors Derek Tarr from South Africa, who may be the best tennis player in Auburn history.
He's produced for us for 4 years. Derek's has a tremendous will to win, and that spills over to the other players, and I believe gives confidence to everybody.
As Tarr has improved, so have the Tigers. Tomorrow, another challenge. Auburn visits Alabama, another team on the verge of breaking into the top 20. The intense rivalry between the two schools has spread into the coaching ranks.
Armstead Neely has been my best friend and sometimes doubles partner and roommate at the University of Florida. And we've known each other for 20 years. Seems like a long time, but we have.
After Alabama, it's Tennessee and Georgia, the conference favorite. Beelan feels if the Tigers can take 2 of those 3 matches, his team is headed for the NCAA tournament. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
I'm excited about coming to Montgomery and doing a show with Channel 12 and Phil Snow, and you've got a great organization, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Alabama shot 9 under par as a team in the second round to take command of the senior college division. Steve Lowry led the way with a blistering 7 under par 64. You see his tee shot here at the par 3 230-yard 6th hole. The Tide golfer opened with a 1/72. He leads the individual race with a 136 total. A par-saving putt of 7 feet here at the 5th hole for Lowry. Alabama's 2-day total of 21 under par is 18 strokes better than second-place Auburn. The Tigers are defending champions in the event. Auburn's Ricky Smallridge here with a beautiful approach to the par 4 7th hole. He lipped out, though, on the birdie attempt from 5 feet. Auburn's Bill Bergen is just 2 strokes back of Lowry in the individual competition. The All-SEC golfer has 2 rounds of 269 on his scorecard. Bergen made 2 here at the par 3 14th hole today. Alabama's Lee Rinker and first-round leader Tom Garner here are tied for 3rd. Another Tide golfer, Kevin Denike, is 4th. Alabama is simply running away with the tournament. As you might expect, Coach Conrad Raylick is a happy man.
We won the Southeastern Invitational here a week or so ago, and we're real pleased with their play. They're quite motivated. There's nothing like winning that gives a team a lot of confidence, and I'm real proud of the boys. They've really worked hard.
In the junior college division of the Alabama Intercollegiate, Chattahoochee Valley Community College leads with a two-day total of 576. That's 8 over par. The leaders boast the top 2 golfers in the individual race. Mark Jordan is at even par 142, while Terry Tourette is at 143. George C. Wallace is second in the junior college division. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Department. At this hour, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and Student Action Committee members of Alabama State University are wrapping up a rally on the steps of the Capitol. The purpose of the rally is to urge support of the proposed merger of 3 local state universities into one Alabama State University. The other universities which would be consolidated under the proposal is Auburn University of Montgomery and Troy State of Montgomery. The march, led by SCLC President Joseph Lowry, began at 10 a.m. this morning. The crowd of about 500 Clappic marchers have now begun to wind down at the state capitol, where Jane Matheson of our staff is standing by live. Jane, what's happening down there at this hour?
Well, Dan, during the first rally to preserve ASU's identity, the students said they'd march again if they had to. Well, they've kept their promise, and they say they're going to come back time and time again. There's also been some SCLC leaders here, including State President John Nettles and SCLC President Joseph Lowry. Dr. Lowry told the crowd there's a national assault on blacks and poor people, and he has asked the students not to let that happen to totally black institutions, including ASU. Dan?
Jane, in comparison to the last rally, there was a rally, I think, in February the 19th to be exact.
Right.
How did that rally, how did today's rally compare with the last one?
Dan, this rally was much smaller. There's been about 500 people here. They say the rally in February there was several thousand people, 2,000, 3,000 people. But the students say, although it's small, the spirit is still here. At the state capitol, Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Thank you very much, Jane. We'll have complete details of today's march activity tonight on the 6 o'clock report. 2 state legislators sponsoring bills to reorganize the Public Service Commission told the Alabama Consumers Alliance last night that reorganization is...
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
In the meantime, at the House of Representatives right now, Chris Grimshaw is still at the Capitol. As you can see, the House chambers are filled right now, not necessarily with members of delegates, I should say, from all across the state, but from Montgomery County. Chris, what's the action involving the Montgomery County delegation?
Well, Bob, just about any time that you have bills of local interest, in other words, bills that will only apply to a single area, the local delegation has to get together and have a public hearing, let people from that area get together and talk about it. One of the bills that is being talked about tonight for the Montgomery County area is a bill that would legalize bingo. Earlier this year, Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans noted that there was bingo in the county, but no law to legalize it. And for that reason, Representative Cecil White has introduced 2 pieces of legislation that would do just that. Right now they're talking about those bills and will probably vote in the next couple of minutes on whether or not they will endorse those bills on the House floor and therefore let it go through for a vote, and it will probably be uncontested on the House floor if this delegation is in favor of it. The bingo would allow the Sheriff's Office to regulate the bingo games, and it would be for nonprofit and charitable organizations. The delegation has already passed several other bills that would do, among other things, allow the city council to raise their city council member pay from $4,200 a year to $9,600 a year, but that would be an option for the city council to take, and it would not apply to any city council members until they are elected for the next term. Another pay increase would be from $25,000 to $50,000 for the mayor, and that again would be for the mayor elected for the next term. And there was an option in there that whoever's elected as mayor would have to announce whether or not he would be in favor of accepting that extra $25,000. Another pay increase would go to the sheriff of Montgomery County for $32,000 over the $25,000 pay increase right now. About 100 feet from me, not too far, just across the rotunda, the members of the Senate have just now adjourned, but earlier they passed a number of bills that gave police powers to a various number of groups. Lisa Nielsen has that story.
Bankers want the bill so that their investigators who are looking into credit card fraud and check forgery can make arrests. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
And earlier this afternoon, the state received bids on its offer to buy a slightly used airplane. The bids ranged from $1.5 to $2.2 million, and it's for an 8-passenger twin-engine airplane. Air Transportation Division Director Harry Mills says this new and slightly used plane will hopefully replace what he described as an older gas-guzzling 8-passenger plane that the state is now using now. During the next week or so, Mills and members of his staff will go over the bids to make sure that the planes offered in the bids meet all the specifications that they had set out. Then when they narrow it down to a couple of planes, they'll look over the planes to check that they are in fact in good condition and meet the specifications they want, and then perhaps a bid announcement will be made perhaps by early next week. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks, Chris. Very busy 20th legislative day in this regular session.
The general fund was running about 20% ahead of last year's receipts, even before the $449 million in oil lease money was expected. That 20% increase comes from new taxes and interest. So Finance Director Sid McDonald felt it was safe to release $6.3 million to the Mental Health Department. That's part of the conditional money the legislature appropriated to be released if general fund revenues were available. The governor's special assistant, Rex Rayner, says the $6.3 million will help bring the mental health department up to court-ordered staffing levels. He says it looks as though mental health will need an additional $6 million for staffing needs by the end of the fiscal year in October. He says he'll weigh that need against the needs of other state agencies that also have conditional appropriations. Meanwhile, the finance director says the state isn't touching any of the money brought into the general fund by leasing oil exploration rights in Mobile Bay. He says that $449 million and its expected $20 to $25 million in earned interest is lumped together with other revenues in the general fund. But McDonald says it's a separate, untouchable sum in the administration's view, at least until plans for the money are definite. McDonald adds, however, that the oil lease money does provide reassurance so that if general fund revenues were to fall off, the general fund wouldn't have to go into proration. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
At 10 this morning, Braddock issued an advisory opinion demanding the board reverse its decision to parole Ellard. And 2 this afternoon, the board announced its decision to review the case. Board Chairman Sarah Sellers defended the original decision to release Ellard to Georgia officials who also wanted him for the double murder.
The board believed it was to the best interest of the state of Alabama to allow Ellard to continue service of his sentence in the Georgia prison system.
Braddock claims the parole board is making excuses now for what he called a nincompoop decision. Ellard was paroled March 2nd, and Braddock contends the Alabama parole board had no assurance Ellard would in fact be denied parole by Georgia officials just 2 days later. While the board members claim it's a misunderstanding of the facts, Braddock claims there have been other similar cases illustrating what he sees as an effort to release prisoners to protect the state from a federal court order. Although the board says new information about Ellard changed their minds, Braddock earlier threatened to sue the board if the Ellard parole weren't revoked.
Because that their act was completely void, null from the very beginning.
Even though the board will likely revoke the parole, Sellers says she feels the original decision to release Ellard was right. Braddock is openly angry at the board and says he's preparing legislation to abolish the 3-member board. As for now, the Alabama Paroles Board has issued a warrant to bring Ellard back from Georgia, but Ellard will stay in a prison there until Georgia officials decide if they want to keep him or turn him over to Alabama authorities. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Parole docket to be seen by the parole board.
To receive us and to say 2 words of this occasion. I'm so delighted that I do hope that this program is going to be better because as a department, such as working with the
The center will be built in 3 phases: a museum of fine arts, a library, and a little theater. The idea is based on the Heritage Green in Greenville, South Carolina. $1 million has been donated by private citizens and businesses, and another $1 million in property is being given to the project by Ida Bell Young, local philanthropist. Project Chairman Robert Wheel is trying to get the museum built first and wants the city of Montgomery to put up another $2 million. Finance Committee Chairman Alice Reynolds says the problem is that the city's budget is already tight, so the only way the city can finance such a project is to float a bond issue, raise some taxes, or increase license fees. Councilman John Starr says the city will need to generate as much as $750,000 a year for 10 years to cover the interest, pay back the loan, and pay for the museum's maintenance costs. But Mrs. Reynolds says the city may not need to raise that much. In addition to the possibility of higher taxes, another problem is that the county won't be much help financially. Mrs. Reynolds says the county commission can only set aside $6,000 for the museum. The committee agreed to investigate other possible ways to finance the museum. Mrs. Reynolds says she'll meet with City Finance Director Sam Austin to explore these possibilities, then get back with the committee members. She says Project Chairman Robert Wheel needs to know soon if the city will commit itself to the project. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
It's a real nice place, and I felt that I would be comfortable there. Playing with Coach Larry Chapman. He's a real nice guy. I think that I just really like the place. This place is really nice. I just really like it.
Alabama Steve Lowry continued his subpar assault in the final round to take the senior college title. Lowry posted a 3-under-par 68 today to go with earlier rounds of 64 and 72. Today, Lowry went out an even par 36, but came roaring home with a 32 on the back nine. A tremendous drive at 18 left him with a wedge shot to the final green. His approach came up just left of the flag. Later, he tapped in for par and a 4-shot victory. Two of his teammates, Lee Rinker and Tom Garner, shared second place, each with 69s in the final round. Auburn's Bill Bergen prevented a clean sweep by the Tide. Bergen finished alone in third at 209 after posting an even par 71 today. He started the final round just 2 shots back of Lowry and closed within 1 of the leader after 10 holes. But Bergen couldn't match that 32 by Lowry on the backside. Alabama's Kevin Denike finished 4th, a round of even par 71 for him today. The junior college individual title went to Chattahoochee Valley's Mark Jordan. Jordan finished the 54 holes tied with Alex City's John Houston at even par 213. The two went 4 holes of sudden death before Jordan prevailed. The winner overcame near disaster here at 18 with a brilliant approach. He made par to secure the playoff spot. Houston, though, was the real story of the final round. He started 8 shots back of Jordan, but blistered the Woodley Lynx for a 63. 8 birdies and 10 pars for Houston on the final 18 holes. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Yeah, the extra trail.
The logs are 14 inches in diameter, and the object saw through the thick lumber as fast as you can.
Ready, set, go.
Today's overall winner competes in the World Chainsaw Cutting Championship Tournament of Kings in Charlotte, North Carolina this fall. The event is expected to attract the most skilled lumberjacks from all over the world. Not only did the hundreds of spectators see the Paul Bunyans at work, but also pole climbing for kids, bingo, and plenty of bluegrass music.
Inside the Coliseum, spectators got a chance to spend their money on the many arts and crafts. Nearly all the goods were either homemade or homegrown by Alabamians who came to the festival from all over the state. Forestry officials say this year's festival is one of the best so far. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Not illegal to own, and they're not illegal to raise. There are rabbit shows. There are registered rabbits, just like they're registered dogs. And it's fine. We try to sell people parakeets, other small animals such as guinea pigs, hamsters, and gerbils for their Easter animals.
Merchants all over Montgomery agree. Easter sales this year are high and have exceeded expectation. Eastdale Mall Marketing Director Jill Lilly says March sales were down some, but the new spring clothes have given April sales a boost. Ms. Lilly says shoes are the biggest seller this year. Eastdale Mall Manager Steve Stevenson agrees, saying shoe sales at Easter are sometimes better than at Christmas. The soft, feminine look in fashions has also stimulated sales. Pizzitz store manager Mike Driver says his store's best sellers are jacket dresses and prom dresses. Driver says business is so good the store had to unexpectedly order more merchandise. Another popular item is girls' dresses, with boys and menswear selling more slowly. The Montgomery Mall stores also report good business this season. Mall manager Bob Radford says shoppers have waited until last minute, but he predicts sales to be just like Christmas time. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
In that silence and darkness, everybody on the car heard two things. First, a kiss.
Street and asked him, "Where is Jesus?" summed up to be 2 steps. Stop, 747. We should clean up not only our cities, but the trash and all aspects of trash. Mr. Jim Jerry, D-Rock the Sky.
According to the study, Alabama forest land is taxed at an average of 59 cents per acre, while the neighboring state of Georgia has an average tax rate of $6.70 an acre. The report surfaced last week in legislative debate over a bill which would give property tax cuts to owners of farm and timber land. The Alabama Education Association, which opposes the bill, says with the lowest property taxes in the country, Alabama landowners don't need a tax break. The report says if Alabama taxed its forest property at the same rate as Georgia, the state could realize an additional $130 million a year in revenue to local governments. According to the report, a total of 4.4 million acres of Alabama's surface area is held by 26 giant landowners such as paper and timber companies. The report says if those 26 landowners were taxed at Georgia's rate, they would have paid $23 million more in property taxes in 1979. The bill would allow farm and timberland to be assessed on the basis of its current use rather than its potential use. That means farmland located near a city or a town which could be considered potentially valuable commercial property would be assessed at the 10% rate for farm and timberland rather than the 20% rate for commercial property. The bill, which is a supplement to the 1978 property tax lid bill, has passed the House and cleared a Senate committee. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
We're ready.
Sir, the Air Force magazine goes along with it.
We've had a keen interest in the Air National Guard. Well, I'm great. And let us know if we can be of,
Right.
now who wants to come fly with me?
Nice to meet you, sir.
You want to let us right there?
Okay.
The co-employee liability bill would prohibit an employee from suing his co-workers, managers, or the owner of the company he works for if the employee is already covered by workman's compensation. 1973 and 1975 laws state that workman's compensation is the only remedy for an injured worker. But court cases have struck down the laws, saying they take away a citizen's common law right to sue a co-worker. So the bill now before the Senate would allow lawsuits only in cases of willful or wanton misconduct. A representative from the Alabama Chamber of Commerce says without the bill, industries won't locate or expand in Alabama. But Birmingham attorney Lanny Vine says if you immunize companies from lawsuits, whether they're at fault or not, you breed irresponsibility. An example Vines uses is a case he won for a Montgomery man who sued Sylvester Chicken. Vine says management had removed some safety guards on a dangerous machine. Vine's client, Marvin Jackson, slipped and the machine tore off his arm and leg. Jackson, who would have gotten $164 a month for 6 years under workman's compensation, won his lawsuit and will get $950 a month for the rest of his life. Vine says workman's comp isn't adequate in catastrophic injuries and points out that when an employee wins a lawsuit, he must repay all workman's compensation he has received. Vine says he'd never have won Jackson's case under the pending bill because it's almost impossible to prove willful misconduct. But the Chamber of Commerce's Walter Smith says lawyers only stand to lose business under the bill. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
System in most cases, but sometimes we kind of stood on our own turf, and it seems like this summer we're standing on. The money that was released to us in the normal channels was so much less than we anticipated getting that we spent most of the money in the first half of this fiscal year on jobs for people, and we don't have enough money with the deferrals that the Department of Labor is making and with some of the cutbacks proposed by the Reagan administration we will not have enough money to maintain these people through the fiscal year locally. And when a community is as large as Montgomery, closely with the school system in most cases, but sometimes we kind of...
How this program will be expanded somewhat this year?
Okay, heretofore, the summer youth program has been purely an income maintenance program, meaning that we...
Bob Thorrington says joint generation legislation wouldn't have passed in 29 other states unless the results were proven effective. He says Alabama Power Company officials don't want the bill passed regardless of its tax result or what it would mean financially to the company and its retail customers. He says Alabama Power simply opposes joint generation because of selfish reasons.
The company would like to remove the cooperatives. It would like to remove the municipalities. It would like to remove TVA from the power business in this state. It would like to further the monopoly that it now enjoys in Alabama by denying generation capabilities to the municipalities and by effectively removing the cooperatives as competition through the means of territorial legislation.
Thorrington disputed the power company's claim that joint generation would increase electric rates for its customers. He says officials at Alabama Power's sister company, Georgia Power, say enactment of joint ventures has had a significant and highly beneficial impact on the company and its retail customers. Thorrington told us that Georgia Power Company officials have said had it not been for joint generation, Georgia Power would have had to raise additional capital. Thorrington says joint generation doesn't mean lower electric rates in Alabama, but rather rates not rising as rapidly in the future. He says Alabama Power wants to immobilize electric cooperatives and keep them from competing effectively. Thorrington says he's not sure if the bill will be passed, but says if it doesn't, politics will be the main reason why. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Regardless of its tax result.
I'm going to unveil this marker at this time and read the inscriptions on it. And the first part of it says, Montgomery is passed, come back together. Everybody, all right, get it? Pullman car, the booth's down at the far end.
The debate is over the current use property tax bill that would allow farm and timberland to be taxed at current value rather than the usually higher speculative value. Two strong lobbies are on opposite sides of the bill. The Alabama Farm Bureau Federation wants the bill so its members will have lower property taxes. And the Alabama Education Association joins the Association of County Commissions in opposing the bill. Those groups say it would reduce revenues going to local governments and in turn to local schools. Opponents of the bill object to its formulas for determining tax rates. They say they're complicated and would be difficult for most assessors to understand. The bill's supporters say the formulas would make tax assessment uniform throughout the state. Opponents also say the bill protects large landowners because it has no limit on the number of acres a person can own and still qualify for the lower rates. What's more, opponents say there are enough senators who oppose the bill as it is now that they could filibuster until the end of the session, or until the bill's sponsors are willing to compromise. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The original recommendation from the city's Transportation Committee and officials of the Montgomery Area Transit Authority was to raise the general bus fares 10 cents and eliminate the Veterans Hospital and South Lawn routes. During the public hearing 2 weeks ago, most people objected to the elimination of the routes rather than the increase in fares. So Councilman Bill Nunn then introduced an amendment to the original recommendation. He asked that the rates go up to 55 cents for the general fare and $5.50 for the weekly fare. Nunn's amendment wouldn't change the 25-cent daily fare for the handicapped and students as originally proposed. Nunn says the increase would offset the need to eliminate the VA and South Lawn routes. MAT's manager, Paul Queen, agreed with the estimate, saying the move would provide a $46 surplus. Some members of the Transportation Committee disagreed with the move, saying the package deal had already been worked out. Councilman Donald Watkins also disagreed, saying the move will only nickel and dime people to death, when the council should come up with more concrete solutions. The council then voted 6-3 in favor of the 15-cent increase. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
I think the President's program looks at reality. I think the block grant concept underwrites the so-called safety net. And I think one of the reasons you hear all of the hue and cry and fussing and moaning and groaning about the shifting is because a lot of facts are going to come forward in government that the people heretofore have not known as to how the money flows.
Each of the committee members offered their various ideas on what first steps should be taken, but the general consensus was to be careful and deliberate, making any decisions only after taking in expert advice. Finance Director Sid McDonald offered, free of charge, the use of a brokerage firm and/or other investment and bond counsel already on retainer for the governor. The committee members seemed to agree the first step should be deciding whether it would be best to invest all of the money and live off the interest, or spend some of it now and invest the rest, or spend all of it now. One issue the committee wants to settle are two House bills spending $90 million of the oil money. Those two bills, introduced by Walter Owens, would fund $45 million to prisons and mental health. Owens says the state has a responsibility to the federal courts to try and meet the court-ordered reforms in those areas. The committee has set a meeting tomorrow morning to hear from McDonald and State Treasurer Annie Laurie Gunner, hoping the Owens bill issue can be solved. Several of the committee members have ideas on what to do with the money. Senator Sonny Callahan of Mobile, elected chairman of this committee, wants to invest all of the money and let the state live on the interest. Representative Bill Drinkard wants to use the money for low-interest housing loans, and the others may have ideas they haven't publicized yet. Sifting through all of the ideas and deciding on the best route could take months. It could be an issue that stretches on into a special session later this year. And for that reason, the committee has moved to extend its life, hoping that time and thought will keep Alabama from misspending the millions, as Alaska and Louisiana reportedly did when they were once faced with a similar windfall. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Together with the laws of God that form the basis of our system of justice. And it's fitting that we do it right here in this courtroom with the jury that's be seated over in that box.
I think the President's program looks at reality. I think the block grant concept underwrites the so-called safety net. And I think one of the reasons you hear all of the hue and cry and fussing and moaning and groaning about the shifting is because a lot of facts are going to come forward in government that the people heretofore have not known as to how the money flows.
The state CETA program, which covers 58 counties, will get $1.3 million more this year than last. CETA Director Linda Hart says the increase will mean 200 more jobs for low-income youths, plus something new, training in job skills.
What we want to do is give them a combination of work experience and behavioral skill training so that they can either go back to school in a more viable, meaningful manner, or they can go into some of our more advanced training.
The Autauga, Elmore, and Montgomery Consortium area is also getting additional money, $36,000 more than last year. But Consortium Director Patricia McDonald says the increase won't provide any more job slots, just cover the increase in the minimum wage. As far as skills training is concerned, Ms. McDonald says her CETA office has done this for the past 3 years.
We feel it's been rather effective. A few of the participants have gone ahead and obtained jobs in a similar field right away.
Applications for summer jobs under the CETA program can be obtained from most high school guidance counselors. Those interested should take the applications to their local employment service. But after May 13th, those living in Montgomery, Autauga, and Elmore County should go to the local CETA office on 415 Montgomery Street. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Under House Bill 324, AIC would be renamed to the Alabama Commission on Post-Secondary Education, and it would control all new and existing programs at the state's post-secondary institutions, as well as approve all off-campus programs. Commission membership would increase by 2, from 12 to 14, with the governor appointing 11 members instead of the 10 he now appoints. State Board member Ron Creel is against the bill, saying it's a slap in the face of the people of Alabama to create another bureaucracy. He introduced a resolution opposing the bill, saying since AIC's reorganization in 1978, certain powers were taken from the State Board and given to AIC. There's been nothing but confusion. Creel charged that the state's junior colleges would be negatively affected by the bill, but Governor James says the bill would create an impartial vehicle overseeing programs at the state's 2- and 4-year schools. Creel's resolution was passed 6-3, with board members Ralph Higginbotham, Harold Martin, and the governor voting against the resolution. Also today, the board approved State Senator Charles Britnell as president of Northwest Alabama State Junior College and Thad McClamey as president of Montgomery's Trenholm State Technical College. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
But again, I'd like to urge the membership not to vote to table the substitute because I'll just have one copy. There's 2 copies there. Let them. Existing law changing the personnel board in the state from 3 members to 5 members, one of which will be appointed by the governor and one of which will be elected by the state employees themselves.
Under the bill, if you own farm or timberland, your property taxes would be based on the current use of the land rather than its potential value if you sold it for commercial development. The bill generally means lower property taxes for farmers and possibly a reduction in property tax revenue going to local schools. Opposing senators used delaying tactics to keep the bill from coming before the Senate, so the bill wasn't even brought up until about an hour ago. Then Senator Bob Gullidge of Robertsdale spoke in favor of the bill, saying it creates formulas for the uniform assessment of property taxes across the state. Senator Dewey White, who opposed bringing up the bill today, predicts the filibuster will last longer than any the Senate has seen so far. The filibuster on the death penalty lasted 3 legislative days, but with only 9 days left in the session, a long filibuster could cripple the Senate this session. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
If the resolution had been adopted, 9th graders entering state schools this fall would need 20 units to graduate. The new requirement calls for 3 units of physical education, but some board members didn't like that number. Board member Roscoe Roberts offered an amendment calling for certain exemptions to the PE curriculum. The amendment provides flexibility for few select students in upper grades with parental and administrative approval to take substitute courses under certain conditions. Some school superintendents spoke in favor of the change because it offers students a choice in taking PE or subjects they're more interested in. Others say there's no substitute for PE. The amendment died for lack of a quorum. Also today, Superintendent Wayne Teague told the board of a survey currently being taken by city and county school superintendents. The survey determines the trend of crime and violence in schools, who's involved, and the cost to school systems and individuals. On another topic, Dr. C.C. Baker told the board the teacher certification examination still being written will be administered on its scheduled date of June 6. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
And this is most encouraging because it's an expensive thing for us, and many times we can do the job better and cheaper if we can make our decisions rather than having those decisions come from Washington. So I think this was as encouraging as any part of the meeting for me.
Most of it before it went. I've been making speeches in support of this for some time. Will return money to the taxpayer of the the citizens of Montgomery through the proposed tax cuts. 10% a year for the next 3 years, or a total of 30%. Certain depreciation schedules that will be advantageous to business. Regulations that have throttled business will be removed. And all of these things will inure to our benefit. And if it takes some cutting of some grants to do it, so be it, and I'm for it.
The bill supporters call it a current use bill, saying it permits forest and farmland owners to be taxed at current value of their land rather than the potential value if the land were sold for development. But the filibustering senators say current use is a misnomer, that the bill has nothing to do with current use because it sets an arbitrary and complicated formula designed to lower taxes for large lumber and paper corporations. Senator Dewey White of Birmingham says the bill would lose $20 million currently going to county governments, and he says he's willing to allow the budgets and other pending legislation to stack up behind the property tax bill if that's what's necessary to kill the bill. Montgomery Senator Bishop Barron says he's spoken to members of the Farm Bureau Federation who support the bill, and he says they won't stand for any compromises. So Barron says he and at least 6 other senators will continue to filibuster for the remaining 8 days of the session. Meanwhile, the governor says he has some serious reservations about the bill, so it's possible that the filibustering senators would strike a deal with the governor, providing that they allow the bill to pass if the governor promises to veto it. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
To help expand your livestock in Nigeria. With us today, we have the chairman of the Senate Agricultural Committee, Mr. Hinton Mitchell, Senator Hinton Mitchell. You chat with him now about the bull. Okay.
The governor says his role is to explain the rationale behind the president's proposals to the people of Alabama. He says the block grant concept is a bold move, one that would give money to the states with no strings attached. Governor James says this would give more responsibility to government at local levels.
Now, there's been a tremendous hue and cry about that. In my judgment, the reason is this will expose how federal dollars are being spent. It will expose what programs are right, which programs are wrong. It will expose where the money is going.
The governor says at first he was against any tax cut before achieving a balanced budget, but he says after talking with the president, he agrees with the tax cuts. He says he came around because he'd like to see more money kept in the personal sector rather than in Washington. On other matters, the governor says there's no truth to published reports that he's decided to run for a second term as governor in 1982. He says his priority now is to get much-needed reform legislation passed. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Compromises that I would take.
under now, which will end April 30th, we're on our regular time deposits. We're earning 14.928% on the credit of the state or any political subdivision thereof be given. Had we known
well, it would be the legislature's option. You could now make it an obligation of existing issues. I'm about to finish. I'm hurrying because I know you have to. There's a great deal of interest.
Kyle Anderson, all-star basketball player. That same Kyle Anderson, champion tennis player. This 17-year-old junior at Montgomery Academy is an extraordinary athlete. Averaging nearly 20 points a game, Anderson led his team to the state 1A basketball tournament this past winter. He was named All-State by the 1A coaches. The Montgomery Tip-Off Club selected him Player of the Year, as did the Montgomery Advertiser-Journal. Anderson's record is just as impressive on the tennis court. At age 16, he was ranked 2nd in the state, 5th in the South, and 38th in the nation. Anderson has won every junior tennis honor the city of Montgomery has to offer.
If I win, well, that's good. And I feel like if I play my best, then that's all I can do. If I play my best and lose, and the other person's got to be just better than me. So, just try to go out and play the best I can. And if it works out, then that's good.
His coaches say it's that kind of attitude that makes Kyle Anderson the all-around person that he is. As you might expect, Anderson is an attractive college prospect.
If I got a chance to play basketball, that's what I'd do. But if not, I'd still love playing tennis. So.
A tip for you college coaches, he would just as soon play both. But then another year may change all that. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports. The highlight of the afternoon was the boys' #1 singles match between the Academy's Kyle Anderson and Dell Holly of Jeff Davis. Anderson won, but Holly took the state's second-ranked 17-year-old to 3 sets. After losing 6-love in the first set, Holly rallied to take the second, 7-5. It was 2-all in the third before Anderson won 4 of the next 5 games to win 6-3. In the boys' #2 singles, JD's Steve Selikoff beat Joey Haber of Montgomery Academy in straight sets, 6-3, 6-2 the scores. In the girls' matches, Marty Bailey, playing #1 for Jeff Davis, defeated the Academy's Elizabeth Ann Byrne 6-1 and 6-3. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
As far as we know, there's only one more like it in the United States out in Texas. It's about 30 miles outside of Dallas, so you really couldn't say it's just like it, seeing as it's not, in the city limits or anything.
What's the idea?
Well, ever since we've moved out in our new house, people have always called wanting to know where they can go fishing around here. I'd have, 2 or 3 people a month call and wanting to know a pond they can fish in. And I don't know any place to tell them. I just tell them to go to the lake. That's the only thing. And sometimes they go up there and they don't really catch anything. And what we're trying to do here is bring the fishing into the city and make it available to them without having to spend so much money on gas and equipment and stuff like that. It's mainly for the people that don't have a boat and can't afford really the expense of buying a boat just to go fishing a few times a year.
Look out, Stanley. Hold my pole, Stanley. Hey! Woo! Goodness, this thing go 3 pounds. Close to it.
What are you doing that I'm not doing?
Well, besides catching fish, I watch Phil's fishing forecast.
Oh.
Before his Washington trip, the governor had said a balanced budget should be the primary concern of the Reagan administration before making any tax cuts. Now he says he sees the president's view more clearly and agrees. He says even with reductions in personal income tax, the federal government will still receive an increase in funds. He says with the tax cuts, Alabamians will be able to keep more money in what he calls kitchen checkbooks. The governor says his role is to explain what the president's programs mean, the rationale behind the proposals. He says the Reagan administration wants the economic package passed as is, without being ripped apart and with no smoke screens. He says it's important for the people of Alabama to understand just what it all means. The governor says one area of the president's program that will benefit the people is a block grant concept, which would give more authority to government at the local level.
Now, there's been a tremendous hue and cry about that. In my judgment, the reason is this will expose how federal dollars are being spent. It will expose what programs are right, which programs are wrong. It will expose where the money is going. And I think it goes with the entire program. It is fundamental to it, and it is a return in making those of us at the local level meet our responsibility.
On other matters, Governor James says there was no truth to rumors that he's decided to run for a second term in 1982. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Matt Carmack is in for Dan Atkinson tonight, and we looked at the radar. Quite a bit of rain out there.
Really so. We were talking about how our tomato plants were enjoying them. Oh, that's good water. We really need that, too.
Your tomato plants and my zinnias.
That's right. We're lucky, too, Bob. We've had no real severe weather. We've had some gusty winds and not...
About 175 Alabamians act as volunteer observers for the Weather Service, and Ron Ferguson works with them all.
Well, we run everything from a housewife to a farmer to a doctor, a lawyer, and we even have a couple of morticians doing this work for us.
There's at least one retired school principal in the ranks, too. James Neighbors, whom we met on our last weather beat, is in his 41st year of recording the rainfall at Otaugaville.
This program is probably one of the most important programs that the Weather Service has. Without this program, we would be unable to forecast our rivers or to, in many cases, issue warnings on a timely basis.
Flood warnings and such?
That'd be flood warnings, as well as many times our observers act as spotters for us, for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms.
Well, it seems clear that these volunteer weather observers across Alabama deserve a real pat on the back for faithfully and without fanfare doing an important job day after day, even year after year. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weather Beats.
Between the governor of this state and the governor of Georgia, merely saying that we would allow, or the governor of Georgia would allow the return of Mark Elliott to Alabama for reconsideration of parole. And whatever happened here, he would go along with, and if for some unknown reason in the future Mark Elliott was ever released from the penitentiary, and God knows I hope he never is released from the penitentiary, Georgia would have and retain jurisdiction to take him back. Governor James signed this executive agreement last night. It was put on some sort of express to his Governor Busby's office today. We're going to encourage Governor Busby to sign this document this afternoon or tomorrow morning. If that's the case, we can have our people on the way to pick up Richard Mark Elliott and bring him back here, and hopefully we can have him sit down for a parole revocation hearing or allow him to show cause why he shouldn't be reconsidered, maybe by next week.
Granich says the documents are already in the hands of Georgia officials and some action is expected soon.
Governor James signed this executive agreement last night. It was put on some sort of express to his Governor Busby's office today. We're going to encourage Governor Busby to sign this document this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
He then blasted the State Pardons and Parole Board, offering a bill to set up a new system of boards in every judicial circuit.
It will eliminate and decentralize the pardon and parole system and take it back to the local communities.
During his news conference, Granite called parole board actions idiotic and dangerously incompetent.
So-called responsible members of the Pardon and Parole Board is turned loose merely to make room for other people. They're either afraid of the federal courts or, as I mentioned just a minute ago, dangerously incompetent to do the job.
Granite said the announcement of his new proposed legislation is to serve notice on the State Pardon and Parole Board that they better start hunting new jobs. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the State Attorney General's office.
Pork, poultry, and beef prices rose only slightly this month. Survey coordinator Dick Fifield says while the low prices are good for consumers, farmers are suffering. He says the supply is up while demand is down, and producers are having to sell their animals and birds at prices below what it costs to produce them. The total market basket of 20 common items this month is $27.39, up 26 cents from March and 12.8% over April of last year. Fifield says freezes and crop failures are continuing to have a detrimental effect on prices, just like they did all during the winter. The survey shows prices in Northeast Alabama to be the cheapest at $26.62, while the most expensive prices are in the Northwest at $27.92. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Superintendent Henry Adair says if the cuts are approved by Congress, the county can expect up to $1.5 million less in educational programs and $1,158,000 less in the food service program. He says the big cuts would be $1 million in the Title I remedial reading program,